They say angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they wear Italian suits and carry guns. Sometimes they arrive exactly when hope has died, when the world has shown its cruelest face one too many times. Sometimes justice doesn't come from a courthouse or a badge. It comes from a man who understands that some debts can only be paid in blood. This is the story of a girl who learned to survive in a world that saw her wheels before her humanity, and the man who reminded that world what happens when you break something precious. California summers smell like jasmine and broken promises. At least, that's what Benny Thompson thought as she sat on her small apartment balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. 6 months ago, she'd left everything behind in Oregon. Her mother's grave, her childhood home, the pitying stares of people who'd known her since before the accident. She was 23 years old, and her life had been divided into 2 distinct chapters, before and after. Before, she'd been a dancer. Not just any dancer, the kind that made audiences hold their breath, the kind that college scouts fought over, the kind with a future so bright it hurt to look at directly. Her mother used to record every performance, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter defy gravity. After came on a rainy November night when Benny was 17. A drunk driver, a red light ignored, the sound of metal crushing, glass shattering, a mother's final scream. Benny woke up in hospital bed 3 days later. Her mother didn't wake up at all. And Benny's legs, her beautiful, powerful legs that had carried her across stages and into dreams, would never carry her again. The driver got 6 years. Benny got a lifetime sentence in a wheelchair. She'd tried to rebuild in Oregon, but every street corner held memories. Every friend who visited brought pity wrapped in cheerful voices. Every day she stayed was another day she suffocated under the weight of who she used to be. So she'd left, packed what little she had, her mother's photo album, her old dance shoes she couldn't bear to throw away, and enough savings from the settlement to survive for maybe a year if she was careful. California felt like a place where you could disappear, start over, become someone new. She hadn't counted on becoming a victim. The apartment was small, a studio on the 2nd floor of an old building with an ancient elevator that broke down twice a week. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, she'd later realize. The kind of quiet where people heard screams and closed their windows, where predators hunted and nobody saw anything. But on that first day, rolling her wheelchair through streets dappled with afternoon light, Benny had allowed herself something dangerous. Hope. The grocery store was only 4 blocks away. Benny had measured it on her phone, planned the route carefully. Mostly flat, sidewalks in decent condition, minimal traffic. She needed the basics: bread, milk, eggs, the medication that kept the phantom pains from her legs at bay. The pharmacy had already called twice about her prescription. She'd been independent once, before her mother died, before the accident. She'd driven herself everywhere, danced until 2 a.m., lived without fear. The wheelchair had taken her mobility, but she'd fought like hell to keep her independence. She refused to be helpless. The September air was warm as she rolled down Maple Street, past the closed factory that everyone said used to employ half the neighborhood, past the corner store with iron bars on the windows, past the warehouse that leaned slightly to the left like a drunk trying to stand straight. She didn't see them until they'd already surrounded her. 5 of them, maybe early 20s, maybe older, hard to tell when cruelty aged people in different ways. They wore the same expression she'd seen before in different cities, different contexts. The look of men who'd learned that power was something you took, not earned. Well, what do we have here? The leader had a snake tattoo that crawled up his neck and disappeared behind his ear. His smile showed too many teeth. Benny's hands gripped her wheels. "Please, I'm just trying to get to the store." "Store's closed," another one said, laughing. He had a scar across his eyebrow that gave him a permanent sneer. "It's 3 in the afternoon." Snake Tattoo crouched down to her eye level, and she smelled cigarettes and cheap beer on his breath. Not for you. Not today. Her heart hammered against her ribs. I don't want any trouble. Then you shouldn't have rolled into our neighborhood, sweetheart. His hand shot out and grabbed her purse from her lap. What you got in here? Please, that's all my money for the month. He dumped it on the ground. $43 in crumpled bills. Her phone, 3 years old, screen cracked. Her keys, the small wallet that held her mother's photo. Scar Eyebrow picked up the phone. This piece of shit? Come on, Wheels, you can do better than this. I don't have anything else. The slap came without warning. Her head snapped to the side, the sound echoing off the warehouse walls. Pain exploded across her cheek, sharp and hot. Tears sprang to her eyes, not from the pain, but from the humiliation, the helplessness, the terrible confirmation that the world was exactly as cruel as she'd feared. Check her pockets, Snake Tattoo ordered. Rough hands patted her down. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. She'd brought exactly what she needed, nothing more. They took it all anyway. The money, the phone, even the $20 bills she'd hidden in her shoe for emergencies. When they left, they kicked over her wheelchair for good measure. Benny hit the pavement hard, her useless legs sprawling at awkward angles. She lay there for a long time, tasting blood from where she'd bitten her tongue, feeling the rough concrete scraping her palms as she tried to right herself. A car passed, didn't stop. Another car kept driving. It took her 40 minutes to get her wheelchair upright and pull herself back into it. Her arms shook with exhaustion, her face throbbed, but worse than any physical pain was the knowledge that bloomed in her chest like poison. She was alone, completely alone, and nobody was coming to save her. That night she sat in her dark apartment and cried until she had no tears left. She cried for her mother, for her legs, for the dancer she'd been, for the woman she'd hoped to become. She cried because the world had beaten her down again, and she didn't know how many times she could get back up. The prescription went unfilled. She couldn't risk going back outside. 2 weeks later, the pain in her legs, phantom though it was, had become unbearable. The pills helped, not much, but enough. Without them, sleep was impossible. Her body remembered what it had lost and screamed in protest. She had to try again. This time she planned a different route. Longer, but it wound through busier streets near the old textile factory. More people meant more safety, or so she told herself. The pharmacy was 6 blocks east. She'd called ahead, made sure they had her prescription ready. In and out, 15 minutes maximum. She could do this. The morning was overcast, the sky the color of old bruises. Benny wore a hoodie pulled up despite the warmth, sunglasses to hide the yellow-green remnants of bruising around her left eye. She kept her head down, moved quickly, told herself that lightning didn't strike twice. She made it to the pharmacy, got her medication, paid with money she'd scraped together from the emergency fund she'd promised herself she wouldn't touch. The pharmacist gave her a concerned look, but said nothing. Nobody ever said anything. She was 3 blocks from home when she heard the voice. "Hey, Wheels, miss us?" Her blood turned to ice. They came from an alley she'd thought was empty. All 5 of them, like they'd been waiting, like they'd known she'd have to come out eventually. Snake Tattoo grinned. Different route today? Smart, but not smart enough. Benny tried to spin her wheelchair around, to flee, but they were faster. They'd always be faster. "Please," she whispered. "I don't have anything. You took everything last time." "That's not true," Scar Eyebrow said, snatching the pharmacy bag from her lap. "What's this? Pills? These worth anything?" "Those are my medication. I need them." He read the label and laughed. "Pain pills. Nice." He pocketed them. "Please, without those, I can't—" The second slap was harder than the first. Her head rang. Blood filled her mouth. "You know what your problem is?" Snake Tattoo grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "You keep coming back. It's like you want us to teach you lessons." I live here, she sobbed. I have to. Then this is what happens every time until you learn to pay the toll. I don't have money for a toll. Then you pay another way. The beating was systematic. Not hard enough to break bones or put her in a hospital, they were professionals at this, but hard enough to hurt, to humiliate, to remind her of her place in their world. When they finally left, they'd taken the medication, the $10 she'd had left, and whatever small ember of courage she'd managed to reignite. A woman walking a dog found her 20 minutes later, called 911, but when the police came, Benny said nothing. She'd learned this lesson in Oregon after the accident, after a dozen interactions with authorities who made promises they never kept. The system didn't protect people like her. She was on her own. That night, she didn't cry. She was beyond crying. She sat in her apartment, lights off, staring at nothing, feeling something inside her break that couldn't be fixed. The old Benny, the one who'd believed in fresh starts and better tomorrows, died quietly in that darkness. What was left was survival, pure and hollow.
Rosie's Diner had been on Maple Street for 47 years. Red vinyl booths patched with duct tape, a jukebox that only played songs from the 50s, and coffee strong enough to strip paint. The owner, Rosa Martinez, had inherited it from her father and ran it with an iron fist and a warm heart. Vincent Palmer had been coming to Rosie's every Thursday at 6 p.m. for 15 years. He always sat in the corner booth, back to the wall, eyes on the door, ordered black coffee and whatever Rosa recommended that day. He read the newspaper, made phone calls in low voices, and watched the street through windows that had witnessed decades of neighborhood life. Most people didn't know who Vincent Palmer was. Those who did kept their distance. He was old school, 62 years old, gray at the temples, hands scarred from a youth spent enforcing lessons with his fists. He'd risen through ranks most people didn't know existed, built an empire on loyalty and fear in equal measure, and now sat at the top of an organization that controlled everything from the docks to the city council. But he'd grown tired of the violence, the betrayals, the constant vigilance. These Thursday dinners at Rosie's were his meditation, his moment of peace in a life soaked in blood. That's where he first saw her. She'd rolled in on a Thursday evening, about 7 weeks after she'd moved to the neighborhood. Her face was healing from something. He recognized the signs of violence immediately. The way she kept her head down, how she flinched when the door opened, the tremble in her hands as she ordered soup and coffee. Vincent had survived 6 decades by reading people. This girl was terrified. She came back the next Thursday, and the next, always alone, always with that same haunted look. By the 4th week, he noticed new bruises. By the 6th, he decided he couldn't ignore it anymore. He approached her table on a cold October evening. She looked up, startled, and he saw it, that flash of pure fear that came from expecting pain around every corner. Forgive the interruption. His voice was rough from years of cigarettes, but he kept it gentle. I'm Vincent. I sit over there on Thursdays. Oh, okay. She started to turn away. Who did that to you? Her eyes widened. Her hand instinctively went to her cheek where the bruising had faded to a yellowish green. Nobody. I fell. I've been doing this a long time, Vincent said quietly. I know what a fall looks like. That's not a fall. Then he stared at him, this stranger with steel gray eyes and an expensive suit that didn't match the diner's aesthetic. Something in his face was familiar, though she'd never seen him before. The way her mother used to look at her after bad auditions, fierce protectiveness mixed with barely controlled rage. I'm fine, she whispered. That's not what I asked. They stared at each other. Vincent waited. He was good at waiting. Finally, Benny shook her head. Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine. He wanted to press. Every instinct screamed at him to press, but he'd learned patience in a business where impatience got you killed. All right. He handed her a card. Nothing on it but a phone number. If you change your mind. She didn't take it. He left it on the table anyway. After he returned to his booth, Rosa brought him more coffee. You know that girl? She asked in Spanish. No. Should I? Rosa sighed. She comes in once a week. Always scared. Always alone. I give her extra portions. She's too skinny.
Anyone giving her trouble? In this neighborhood? Rose's laugh was bitter. Everyone gets trouble here. You know that. Vincent did know, and for the first time in a long time, it bothered him. He'd built his empire on controlling territory, on making sure his people paid their dues, on enforcing order through fear. But there was order, and then there was chaos masquerading as order. There were rules even in his world. You didn't hurt kids, you didn't touch women who couldn't fight back, you didn't prey on the weak. Someone was breaking those rules, on his streets. He started asking questions, made phone calls. His people were good at finding information. By the following Thursday, he knew her name, Benny Thompson, and her story. The accident, the dead mother, the new start that was turning into a nightmare. He also knew about the gang, 5 punks who thought controlling a few blocks made them players. They ran protection rackets on shop owners who barely scraped by, dealt drugs to high school kids, beat up anyone who couldn't fight back. Vincent had been ignoring them. They were small time, beneath his notice, a problem for regular police, not his concern. But they'd made it his concern when they touched that girl. He began watching, waiting, following patterns. He knew they'd come for her again. Predators always returned to easy prey, and when they did, he'd be ready. He just didn't expect it to happen at his diner.
Friday evening arrived with the smell of rain in the air. Benny had fought with herself all day about whether to go out. Her supplies were running low. She'd been rationing food for 2 weeks, too afraid to make the trek to the grocery store. But Rosie's diner felt safer somehow. Maybe it was the lights, the people, the warm smell of coffee and frying bacon. Or maybe it was the man in the corner booth who watched everything with those knowing eyes. She rolled down Maple Street as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and purple. The diner was just ahead, its neon sign flickering. Rosie's, best coffee in California since 1978. Almost there. Almost safe. The footsteps behind her came fast. There she is, our favorite Wheels. No, not now. Not when she was so close. Benny tried to speed up, but 4 of them surrounded her before she'd gone 3 feet. Snake tattoo, scar eyebrow, and 2 others she'd seen that first day. "You've been avoiding us," Snake Tattoo said, grabbing her wheelchair handles. "That's rude, after all the nice times we've had together." "Please," Benny whispered, "I have nothing. You've taken everything." "You always say that, but you keep coming outside, keep rolling around like you own these streets." He leaned down, his breath hot on her face. "Maybe we need to teach you a permanent lesson this time. Make sure you really understand." The diner door opened. Vincent Palmer stepped out into the evening air, a cigarette between his fingers. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, his shirt collar open. He looked like he'd just finished a nice dinner, not a care in the world. He took a long drag of his cigarette, let the smoke curl into the air, then dropped it and crushed it under his Italian leather shoe with deliberate slowness. "Evening, gentlemen," his voice carried across the street, not loud, but with the weight of absolute authority. Snake Tattoo turned, annoyed. "Keep walking, old man. This doesn't concern you." Vincent's expression didn't change. "Funny thing about that. See, this is my street. That's my diner. And that young lady you're terrorizing, she's under my protection." One of the others laughed nervously. "Your protection? Who the hell are you?" Vincent smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Benny had ever seen, empty of humor, full of dark promise. Vincent Palmer. The name hung in the air like a curse. Benny saw the recognition flood Snake Tattoo's face, the color draining, the sudden terror that came from realizing you'd made a catastrophic mistake. "Mr. Palmer, we didn't know." "Didn't know she was a human being?" Vincent's voice dropped to something ancient and dangerous. "Didn't know she deserves to roll these streets without fear? Didn't know that beating a defenseless woman makes you the lowest form of coward? Please, we'll leave. We'll never touch her again." "You're right about that." Vincent pulled back his jacket just enough to show the gun in his shoulder holster. But more than that, 2 SUVs rolled up silently, flanking the street. Doors opened. 6 men stepped out, all wearing the same cold, professional expression.
See, boys, I've been watching, asking questions, and I know what you've done to Miss Thompson here. First attack, 3 months ago. Stole her grocery money and medication funds. Second attack, 6 weeks ago. Took her prescriptions, pain medication she needs because of a car accident that killed her mother and destroyed her legs. Third attack, that was going to be tonight. Benny's eyes widened. He knew. He'd known everything. Mr. Palmer, please, we were just what? Just terrorizing a young woman who's already survived more pain than you could imagine? Just proving that you're tough by beating someone in a wheelchair? He leaned down, his each step a judgment. Let me tell you something about real power, boys. Real power is protecting people who can't protect themselves. Real power is creating a world where a girl like Miss Thompson can get groceries without being hunted like prey. He stopped inches from Snake Tattoo. You know what you are? You're everything I spent my life fighting against. You're chaos. You're cruelty for its own sake. You're the reason people lock their doors and teach their children to be afraid. We made a mistake. Yes, you did. And in my world, mistakes have consequences. He nodded to his men. Take them to the warehouse on Miller Street. You know which one. As the men moved forward, Snake Tattoo fell to his knees. Please, Mr. Palmer, please. We have families. So did she. Vincent's voice could have frozen fire. Where was your mercy when she begged, when she cried, when she had nothing left and you took it anyway? They dragged the screaming men to the SUVs. Benny sat frozen, watching a form of justice she'd never imagined. It was terrifying. It was brutal. It was what she dreamed of every night since the first attack. When the street was clear, Vincent turned to her. His expression softened, not much, but enough to see the human beneath the monster. Miss Thompson, he crouched beside her wheelchair, eye to eye. I apologize for not acting sooner. I suspected, but I didn't know for certain. I should have known. You knew? Her voice cracked. I've been coming to Rosie's for 15 years. I notice things. He gestured to the diner. You come here every week, always alone, always scared. I saw the bruises, the way you flinched. I asked questions, learned your story. Tears spilled down Benny's cheeks, not from fear this time, but from something she'd forgotten existed. Relief, gratitude, the overwhelming feeling of being seen. Why? She whispered. Why do you care? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than he'd heard it. I had a daughter once. She'd be about your age now. She was in a car accident when she was 16. A drunk driver ran a red light. She didn't make it. Benny's hand flew to her mouth. I've spent 20 years making sure that drunk drivers in this city face consequences, that the streets are as safe as I can make them. But I got distracted, built an empire, forgot the reason I built it. He met her eyes. You reminded me. These last few weeks, watching you fight to survive, to stay independent despite everything, you reminded me what matters. What are you going to do to them? Benny asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Vincent stood, brushing off his knees. What needs to be done? They'll never hurt anyone again. That's all you need to know. He pulled out his wallet and handed her several $100 bills. This is yours, for everything they took and then some. And from now on, you eat at Rosie's whenever you want. You don't pay. Anyone asks, you tell them Vincent said so. I can't accept. You can, you will. His tone left no room for argument. And Miss Thompson, no one in this city will ever touch you again. I have your word. My people will know your face. If anyone so much as looks at you wrong, they answer to me. Benny couldn't speak, couldn't process. This stranger, this dangerous, terrifying man had given her something she thought she'd lost forever. Safety. Why? She asked again, tears streaming freely now. Vincent's expression was sad, ancient with regrets. Because someone should have protected my daughter, and they didn't, and I can't fix that. But I can make sure you're protected. I can make sure that in this small corner of the world, monsters don't win. He opened the diner door for her, gesturing her inside. Go on, Rose has been keeping your soup warm. As Benny rolled through the door, she turned back. Mr. Palmer, thank you. He nodded once. Thank you, Miss Thompson, for reminding me who I'm supposed to be.
The SUVs drove away into the night. Vincent walked to his car, pulled out his phone, and made a call. "It's done. Make sure they understand, slowly, what happens to people who hurt the innocent in my city." He hung up and looked back at the diner. Through the window, he could see Benny talking to Rosa, actually smiling for the first time since he'd noticed her. That smile, he decided, was worth every dark thing he was about to do. In his world, justice wasn't blind. It had eyes everywhere, and tonight, it had seen everything.
3 months later, Benny Thompson sat in her usual booth at Rosie's diner, a cup of coffee steaming in front of her. The bruises had long since faded. She'd gained weight, Rosa made sure of that, and for the first time since the accident, since her mother's death, since moving to this cursed and blessed city, she felt something like peace. Vincent Palmer still came every Thursday at 6 p.m. They didn't talk much. She sensed he wasn't a man who did small talk. But sometimes he'd nod at her, and she'd nod back, and in that silent exchange was an understanding that needed no words. She was safe. She was seen. She mattered. The city hadn't changed. It was still hard, still dangerous, still full of shadows. But Benny had learned something her mother used to tell her before every performance. Sometimes you don't need the whole world to be kind. Sometimes you just need one person to stand between you and the darkness. Vincent Palmer was that person. A devil to some, an angel to her. She'd learned that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they wear Italian suits and carry the weight of terrible choices. Sometimes they deliver justice that courtrooms can't. Sometimes they save you not because it's right, but because someone they loved couldn't be saved. And sometimes that's enough. Benny picked up her coffee, looked out at Maple Street, her street now, safe and hers, and allowed herself something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, fragile, precious hope. And in the corner booth, Vincent Palmer read his newspaper and watched the street, a silent guardian who would never stop watching, never stop protecting. Because some debts, he'd learned, are paid not to those we've lost, but to those we can still save.
If this story of redemption and sacrifice touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share it with someone who needs to hear that change is always possible. Stories like Adrian's remind us that no one is beyond saving, and that sometimes the most broken people become the most devoted protectors. Don't stop here. We have more incredible stories waiting for you. Click on one of our videos to continue this journey of hope, transformation, and unconditional love. Each story will move you in ways you never expected. Thank you for being part of this community. Keep watching, keep believing.